Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! The sun's morning embrace warmed the pristine office on the sky-kissed 42nd floor, revealing the city's financial heart. Golden rays danced through soaring windows, illuminating the exquisite mahogany desk where a forgotten cup of black coffee, now tepid, remained a silent observer of the endless financial stratagems strewn across the desk's surface. Yet another milestone, a confident voice proclaimed with subtle pride. Another victory to savor. A slender finger adjusted the impeccable knot of an expensive silk tie, a mere flourish for the perfection that was already in place. In the future, we will celebrate success. The board as much as me. Henry, perched atop his ergonomic throne, paused to revel in the fruits of his labor. His ascent through corporate labyrinths, commencing at a tender age, had been merciless, leaving behind casual friendships and the faintest trace of relaxation. His 36-year-old physique, honed to precision by disciplined workouts and strict diet plans, matched the charcoal sophistication of his bespoke suit, a testament to meticulous planning. They wore expressions that Henry immediately recognized as trouble, not the corporate crisis kind, but the "we're planning something" kind that typically emerged after too many drinks at company retreats. "What's the occasion?" Henry asked, gesturing to the leather chairs across from his desk. Richard, always the informal one despite his expensive navy suit, perched on the edge of Henry's desk instead. "We've been talking."
"Dangerous activity,"
Henry replied dryly, closing his laptop.
"Especially coming from marketing."
Patricia laughed, smoothing her pencil skirt as she took a seat. "It's about the Anderson deal." The Anderson merger was Henry's latest triumph. A hostile takeover executed with surgical precision, requiring 100-hour work weeks and a complete absence of mercy. "What about it?" Henry asked, instantly on guard. Douglas, ever the lawyer in his gray pinstripe suit, cleared his throat.
"Your performance was impressive. Ruthless, even."
"That's what you pay me for." "True." Patricia nodded. "But we've been wondering something. You're so completely devoted to corporate domination. I prefer strategic market positioning," Henry interjected with a half-smile. "That we question if you could function in any other environment," she finished. Henry frowned. "Meaning?" Richard grinned, that troublemaker smile that had gotten them both in hot water during their MBA days.
"We think you've forgotten how to exist outside this tower of glass and steel. You've optimized yourself into a corporate machine. Again, that's literally in my job description," Henry replied, feeling strangely defensive. "We have a proposition," Douglas said, leaning forward. "A friendly wager, if you will." Henry's interest piqued. He never turned down a competition. "I'm listening." Patricia pulled out her tablet and placed it on the desk. "We bet that you couldn't last a week living a completely different life. Specifically," she slid the tablet toward Henry. On the screen was a suburban home with a white picket fence, a cookbook, and an apron. "A housewife," Richard announced, with obvious delight. "1 week living as a suburban housewife!" Henry stared at the tablet, then at his colleagues' expectant faces. "You're joking." "Dead serious," Douglas replied. 1 week. No work calls, no emails. Just cooking, cleaning, household management. "That's ridiculous," Henry scoffed. "Exactly why we know you can't do it," Patricia challenged. "The great Henry Morrison, brought down by a vacuum cleaner and a cookie recipe." Henry narrowed his eyes.
He recognized the psychology at work. They were baiting him, using his competitive nature against him. And worse, it was working.
"What are the stakes?"
he asked, finally. Richard's grin widened.
"If you make it the full week, we each donate $50,000 to your favorite charity." "And if I don't?" "You take 2 weeks of actual vacation this year,"
Douglas said.
"Not working remotely from some beach, but actually disconnecting."
Henry drummed his fingers on the desk. The thought of disconnecting from work for 2 entire weeks was genuinely anxiety-inducing. But $150,000 for his brother's Pediatric Cancer Research Foundation.
"Fine,"
he said, extending his hand. 1 week. Excellent, Patricia beamed, shaking his hand firmly.
"We've already arranged everything. The house is ready, fully stocked with everything a proper housewife needs."
Henry's confidence faltered.
"You already set this up? Before I agreed." "We knew you couldn't resist a challenge."
Richard shrugged.
"You start Saturday."
The suburban house looked exactly like the picture. 2-story colonial with sage green shutters and an immaculate lawn. Henry parked his Audi in the driveway, feeling distinctly out of place in his weekend casual attire of designer jeans and a cashmere sweater. The key was under the mat, just as Patricia had texted. Inside, Henry found a spacious, well-appointed home with furniture that looked like it came straight from a homemaking magazine. Everything was painfully domestic. Throw pillows with inspirational sayings, candles that smelled like baked goods, and family photos featuring models who looked nothing like him. On the kitchen counter sat a large gift box with a note attached. Every housewife needs the proper attire. Consider this your starter kit. Instructions for the week are in the folder. Remember, no cheating. We've disabled your work email access, and the neighbors think you're Allie, the cousin of the homeowners who's house-sitting. Good luck. P.R.&D. Henry opened the box with growing trepidation. Inside, neatly folded, was a floral pink sundress with a white apron, followed by layers of women's clothing, cardigans, skirts, blouses, even undergarments. At the bottom of the box sat a pair of low-heeled pumps and a shoebox containing stiletto heels.
"They can't be serious,"
he muttered, holding up the sundress against his chest. It was modestly cut, but undeniably feminine, with a sweetheart neckline and a flared skirt that would hit just below the knee. Next, he opened the folder. Inside was a week's meal plan with recipes, a cleaning schedule, and a list of housewife duties that included everything from gardening to proper table setting. There was also a makeup tutorial printout, and Henry nearly dropped the folder, an appointment card for a salon visit scheduled for that afternoon. His phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "Forgot to mention, full commitment required. No half measures. The neighbors will report back to us." Henry looked from the dress to the folder to his phone. He could walk away now, take the vacation penalty, and never speak of this again. But something about giving up before even trying grated against everything in his nature.
1 week,
he reminded himself.
I've closed multi-billion-dollar deals under worse pressure.
With grim determination, Henry took the box upstairs to the master bedroom. 3 hours later, Allie stood in front of the full-length mirror, barely recognizing the reflection. The salon visit had been transformative. The stylist, who had apparently been well briefed by Patricia, had given Henry's short brown hair an auburn color treatment and attached extensions that fell in soft waves past his shoulders. They'd shaped his eyebrows, applied a natural-looking makeup palette, and even added false eyelashes that made his brown eyes appear larger and more expressive. The pink sundress fit surprisingly well over the shaping undergarments. The white apron tied at the waist created an illusion of curves where none had existed before. On his feet were the low-heeled pumps. Henry had immediately abandoned any notion of attempting the stilettos today.
"This is insane,"
he whispered to his reflection, turning slightly to take in the full effect. Despite his initial resistance, he had to admit they'd done a thorough job. If he passed his own mother on the street, she might not recognize him. A notification chimed on the special Housewife phone they'd provided, stripped of all business apps and filled instead with recipes, home decoration ideas, and a group chat labeled Neighborhood Ladies. The message was from Patricia. "Looking good, Allie. Remember, dinner needs to be ready by 6. The recipe for tonight is tabbed in the cookbook. Don't burn the house down." Henry, no Allie now, took a deep breath and headed downstairs to the kitchen. The heels clicked against the hardwood, requiring a different way of walking that felt alien after decades of confident strides in leather Oxfords. The cookbook sat open on the granite counter, featuring a recipe for herb-roasted chicken with seasonal vegetables. It looked deceptively simple, but Henry had barely boiled water in the past decade, relying on restaurant deliveries and his building's concierge service for meals. "How hard can it be?" Allie muttered, tying the apron strings more securely. "It's just applied chemistry with timing variables." 2 hours later, the kitchen looked like a war zone. Vegetable peelings littered the counter. 3 different pots had boiled over, and the smoke detector had gone off twice. But somehow, miraculously, a presentable roast chicken now rested on a serving platter, surrounded by slightly overcooked but edible vegetables. Allie collapsed into a dining chair, careful not to snag the sundress on the wooden edges. Her feet ached from the unfamiliar shoes, and flour dusted the front of her apron despite her best efforts to stay clean. "Day 1, she sighed, taking a photo of her culinary creation to send to the executive trio. 6 more to go. By the 3rd day, Allie had established something resembling a routine. Mornings began with a struggle through makeup application, followed by selecting an outfit from the extensive wardrobe her colleagues had provided. Today featured a blue, knee-length skirt, paired with a white blouse and cream cardigan, complemented by ballerina flats that were blessedly more comfortable than any of the heeled options. The auburn hair had become easier to manage with practice, falling in soft waves that Allie had learned to style with the help of YouTube tutorials played on repeat. The makeup routine had been simplified to foundation, minimal eye makeup, and a neutral lip color that required less maintenance throughout the day. Currently, Allie was tackling the living room with a vacuum cleaner, the long cord constantly tangling around furniture legs and nearly tripping her several times. "Who designed this infernal device?" she muttered, wrestling with the power cord. In her corporate life, cleaning was something that happened invisibly while she was at work. Now she understood why her cleaning service charged so much. The doorbell rang just as she'd finally untangled the cord. "Coming!" Allie called, hastily unplugging the vacuum. She smoothed down her skirt and tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear before opening the door. A woman approximately her age stood on the porch, holding a basket covered with a gingham cloth. She wore yoga pants and an athletic top that suggested she'd just come from a workout, though her makeup and hair were impeccable. "Hi there! I'm Monica from across the street. You must be Allie." Allie forced a smile, suddenly aware of how little practice she'd had with feminine social interactions. "Yes, that's me. Just house-sitting for a while." "How lovely! We saw someone new moved in and wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood. These are just some homemade muffins." Monica extended the basket. That's very kind, thank you. Allie accepted the gift, trying to mirror the woman's warm expression. I'm heading up the neighborhood committee for the summer festival next weekend. We could really use another pair of hands if you're still around. Allie's mind raced for an appropriate response. I'm not sure how long I'll be staying, but that sounds nice. Perfect. We're having a planning brunch tomorrow at my place. Number 42 across the street, 10 a.m. Nothing fancy. Monica's eyes flicked over Allie's outfit with approval. Love the cardigan, by the way. Really brings out the warmth in your hair. Thank you, Allie replied, momentarily flustered by the compliment. After Monica left, Allie leaned against the closed door, heart pounding. A social gathering wasn't part of the bet parameters, but declining might seem suspicious to the neighbors who were supposedly reporting back. Turning to place the muffin basket on the hall table, she caught her reflection in the entryway mirror. The person looking back was still startling. Soft auburn waves framing a face that appeared more feminine with each passing day of practice. The cream cardigan adding a gentle softness that Henry would never have considered for himself. More disturbing was the realization that this persona didn't feel as uncomfortable as it had on day one. The clothes, initially restrictive and foreign, now felt like a different kind of uniform, one with its own protocols and expectations, not unlike the corporate armor she'd worn for years. Allie returned to the vacuum cleaner with renewed determination. If she was going to attend a neighborhood committee brunch tomorrow, she needed to perfect her housewife skills tonight. The neighborhood brunch proved surprisingly enlightening. Seated around Monica's expansive dining table with 7 other women from surrounding houses, Allie observed the complex social dynamics at play. There were clear hierarchies, unspoken alliances, and communication patterns that reminded her of boardroom politics, just dressed in floral prints and accessorized with mimosas instead of fountain pens. Allie had chosen a lavender dress with cap sleeves for the occasion, paired with the dreaded stiletto heels as a personal challenge. The hours spent practicing walking in them the previous evening had paid off. She managed to navigate Monica's house without stumbling, though sitting was a welcome relief. So, Allie, began a blonde woman named Heather, who clearly occupied a high position in the social hierarchy. What does your husband do? The question caught Allie off guard. The backstory provided by her colleagues was minimal at best. I'm actually not married, she replied, taking a sip of her mimosa to buy time. This answer created a ripple of interest around the table. Divorced? Asked another woman sympathetically. No, Allie considered her options quickly. I've been focused on my career until recently. I'm taking some time to explore other interests. How refreshing! Monica exclaimed. Independence is so important. What field were you in? Finance, Allie answered truthfully, relieved to be on familiar ground. That explains your attention to detail, noted an older woman named Barbara, gesturing to the perfect place settings Allie had helped arrange. You've got a good eye. The conversation shifted to the summer festival, and Allie found herself volunteering to handle the budget spreadsheets and vendor coordination, tasks that leveraged her actual skills while fitting within her current role. By the time she walked back to her borrowed house, more confidently now in the stiletto heels, Allie realized she'd enjoyed herself. The social interaction, divorced from corporate objectives and power plays, had been genuinely pleasant. The lavender dress swished around her legs as she climbed the porch steps, a sensation that had become almost comforting in its femininity. Inside, Allie kicked off the heels with a sigh of relief and padded to the kitchen in bare feet. The meal plan for tonight indicated homemade pasta, which seemed ambitious given her still developing culinary skills. But the challenge was appealing. As she tied on her apron and began gathering ingredients, Allie caught herself humming, something Henry never did. The realization gave her pause. 4 days into this experiment, and already the boundaries between Henry and Allie were blurring in unexpected ways. Day 5 brought rain, transforming the suburban landscape into a watercolor painting of grays and greens. Allie stood at the kitchen window in soft pink pajamas, watching droplets race down the glass, while the coffee maker gurgled behind her. The auburn hair was piled in a messy bun on top of her head, face bare of makeup in the early morning light. The house phone rang, startling her from her reverie. "Hello? Good morning, housewife." Richard's cheerful voice came through the speaker. "How's domestic bliss treating you?" Allie rolled her eyes, though something in her was genuinely pleased to hear from her colleague. "I've mastered 3 pasta sauces and can now vacuum an entire house without tripping over the cord. My resume grows more impressive by the day." Richard laughed. "The neighbors say you're fitting in beautifully. Monica was particularly impressed with your festival planning suggestions. You've got spies everywhere, I see." "Just keeping tabs on our investment. 2 more days to go. Still confident?" Allie glanced around the kitchen, at the cookbook open to a breakfast casserole recipe, at the shopping list magneted to the refrigerator, at the flower arrangement she'd created yesterday, sitting proudly on the counter. "Absolutely," she replied, surprised by her own certainty. "This is the easiest money you've ever lost." After hanging up, Allie poured her coffee and carried it upstairs to prepare for the day. The closet, once intimidating with its array of feminine options, now seemed like a playground of possibilities. For today's rainy weather, she selected dark jeans that hugged curves created by the shaping undergarments, paired with a soft green sweater that complemented her auburn hair. The makeup routine had become almost meditative. Foundation, powder, a touch of blush, mascara, and tinted lip balm. The person in the mirror looked back with increasing familiarity. Auburn waves falling around shoulders that seemed to have lost some of their squareness through conscious adjustment of posture. The day's schedule included grocery shopping for weekend meals and attending an afternoon garden club meeting that Monica had insisted she join. In the corporate world, Henry would have delegated such tasks or avoided them entirely. Here, as Allie, she found herself looking forward to the simple purposes of the day. At the supermarket, Allie navigated the aisles with growing confidence, consulting her list and comparing prices with the same analytical skill she once applied to market forecasts. The green sweater received several compliments from other shoppers, and she found herself engaging in brief, pleasant conversations about recipes and seasonal produce. The garden club meeting, held in Barbara's sunroom despite the rain, proved unexpectedly fascinating. Allie absorbed information about soil composition and growing seasons with the same focus she once dedicated to quarterly reports. When she contributed an idea about optimizing the community garden layout for maximum yield, the other women nodded with appreciation. "You bring such a fresh perspective, dear," Barbara commented, patting Allie's hand. "Sometimes we get stuck in our ways." Driving home through the rain, windshield wipers keeping rhythm with the radio, Allie reflected on the genuine connections she'd formed in less than a week. These women knew nothing of her corporate achievements, her net worth, or her power in the financial world. They simply appreciated her contributions, her attention to detail, and apparently how the green sweater brought out the highlights in her auburn hair. Back at the house, Allie prepared a more ambitious dinner than the meal plan required, a celebration of sorts for having passed the halfway mark of the challenge. As she chopped vegetables with increasing skill, she realized that cooking had elements of the focus and precision she valued in her work, just applied to a different medium. The resulting meal, pan-seared salmon with roasted vegetables and a lemon butter sauce, looked worthy of a cooking magazine spread. Allie took a photo before sitting down at the perfectly set table, complete with a single flower in a bud vase and a properly folded napkin. Eating alone in the quiet house, Allie surprised herself by not reaching for her phone or thinking about work emails. Instead, she savored each bite, mentally cataloging what she'd do differently next time to enhance the flavors. Later, curled on the sofa in soft loungewear with a novel, another luxury Henry rarely permitted himself, Allie realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this relaxed. The constant tension that had lived between her shoulder blades for years had eased. The perpetual mental checklist of corporate deadlines and strategic moves had quieted. The rain continued its gentle percussion against the windows as Allie turned pages, auburn hair falling forward when she leaned to sip her tea. The femininity that had felt like a costume days ago now wrapped around her like a comfortable embrace. On the final morning of the challenge, Allie woke before her alarm, sunlight streaming through curtains she'd forgotten to close. For a moment, she lay still, taking inventory of the past week's transformation. Her body felt different, softer in some places from the rich foods she'd prepared, yet more limber from the different ways she'd learned to move in feminine attire. Her hands, once manicured into corporate blandness, now featured pale pink polish that surprisingly hadn't chipped despite her housework. The most significant change, however, was internal. The relentless drive that had propelled Henry up the corporate ladder had found new outlets, perfecting recipes, mastering household systems, connecting with neighbors. The anxious edge that fueled 100-hour workweeks had softened into something more sustainable. Today's outfit was special. Her colleagues were coming for dinner to conclude the bet officially. Allie selected a navy blue dress with a flattering A-line skirt and 3/4 sleeves, elegant without being overly formal. The auburn hair was styled into loose curls that framed her face, makeup applied with the skill gained from a week of daily practice. The menu had been planned meticulously, a showcase of everything she'd learned, from appetizers to dessert. The table was set with precision, fresh flowers arranged as the centerpiece, wine breathing in crystal decanters. Every surface in the house gleamed from her attentions. When the doorbell rang precisely at 7, Allie took a deep breath and smoothed the navy dress before opening the door with a genuine smile. Richard whistled appreciatively. "Well, well, Martha Stewart has nothing on you." Patricia elbowed him before embracing Allie warmly. "You look lovely. That color is perfect with your hair." Douglas, always more reserved, offered a small gift bag. "Congratulations on making it through the week. We had our doubts." Allie welcomed them into the house she'd come to think of as her own, accepting compliments on the decor and appetizers with gracious confidence that would have been foreign to Henry. Over dinner, they shared laughter and stories, her colleagues expressing genuine amazement at the quality of the food and the transformation of their formerly micromanaging CFO. "So," Patricia said finally, as they moved to the living room with coffee and dessert, "you've officially won the bet. 150,000 to your charity of choice." "Thank you." Allie nodded, settling comfortably on the sofa, legs crossed at the ankle as she'd learned was more feminine. The navy dress arranged itself elegantly around her. "Now you can go back to terrorizing the financial markets." Richard grinned, loosening his tie.
"I bet you're itching to check your email."
Allie looked down at her pink polished nails, then around at the home she'd created within these walls. The thought of returning to fluorescent lights, constant stress, and the endless pursuit of profit margins suddenly felt hollow. "Actually," she said slowly. I'm not sure I want to go back. 3 pairs of eyes widened simultaneously. What do you mean? Douglas asked, setting down his coffee cup. Allie tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear, a gesture that had become natural over the past week. I mean, I've been thinking, this experience was supposed to be torture, right? Something I'd barely endure for the sake of winning. But instead, you enjoyed it, Patricia finished softly, understanding dawning on her face. I more than enjoyed it, Allie admitted. I found peace here, satisfaction, connections that don't hinge on what I can do for someone's bottom line. Richard leaned forward. Are you seriously considering giving up your career over 1 week of playing house? Not giving up a career, Allie corrected. Choosing a different one, maybe consulting part-time, or financial coaching for families. Something that uses my skills but allows for this lifestyle too. She gestured to herself, to the home around them, to the evidence of a life lived at a sustainable pace. And the other aspects? Douglas asked delicately, clearly referencing her complete feminine presentation. Allie smiled, running a hand down the soft fabric of the navy dress. Turns out that was the most unexpected part of all. This feels right in a way I never anticipated. I've been so focused on achieving the next goal that I never stopped to consider who I actually wanted to be. Patricia reached over to squeeze her hand. I think you've discovered something important, however unconventional the journey. The company will have questions, Douglas noted, ever the pragmatist. Let them ask, Allie replied with newfound confidence. I've managed their money for years. I can manage this transition. As the evening concluded and her colleagues prepared to leave, each with varying degrees of surprise and support, Allie stood in the doorway of the suburban home that had catalyzed such unexpected change. The navy dress caught the porch light, her auburn hair glowed with warmth, and her smile held a certainty that had eluded Henry despite all his corporate success. We'll talk details next week, she told them. For now, I have a neighborhood festival to help organize. After their cars disappeared down the street, Allie closed the door and leaned against it, taking in the quiet house that now felt like a perfect fit. The bet was over, but Allie's life was just beginning. In losing the corporate armor she'd hidden behind for so long, she'd found a truer version of herself, one who could balance achievement with contentment, strength with softness. Tomorrow, she would call the real estate agent about purchasing the house. Next week, she would draft a transition plan for work. And in between, she would continue perfecting her pie crust technique and learning to grow heirloom tomatoes with the garden club. The navy dress swished softly as Allie moved through the rooms, turning off lights and appreciating the home she'd created. Her auburn hair caught the moonlight streaming through the windows as she climbed the stairs, ready for rest and whatever new discoveries the morning would bring.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!